do that for now. Okay. Let's see. Hello. Hi everyone. I will figure this out again. Let's see. Hi. Okay, there we go. So nice to see faces coming on. Hi, Jenna. Hi. Hi, Bridget. Alyssa, Sonia. Hi. Carrie. Carrie from far away. Juliet. Hi. Ileana. Did I say that right? Hi. Holly. Hi, hi, Holly. Hey, Bridget. Bridget got out of the shower.
I'm in an Airbnb in Arizona.
Hi, Kat. Okay, I'm just gonna give it like 1 or 2 minutes, and then we're gonna jump in. Jump
I
in.
get to see Bridget next Friday. She's in Arizona, so we're gonna have
Hi.
a play
I
date.
can't
Is
hear you.
Charlie?
Why can't I hear you?
Oh,
It
or
doesn't
can
look
you
like
hear?
maybe it's your ear headphones. Hi,
Can you
Joy.
hear me
Oh my
now?
gosh, Joy's here. Cat Joy's here.
No.
Christine, can you not hear us?
Hi, Joy. Say something. Say something, Bridget.
Can you not hear us?
I can't hear you either. What is happening? Oh,
Yeah.
technology. Ooh. All right. Let me see. Why? Why? Hi, Michelle. All right. Hope you can hear me. You can hear everyone? Okay.
I
Hold
can,
on.
yeah,
Then
I
it's
can
just
hear you.
me. Hi, Joy. Hold on. I can't hear anyone, so let me see. Ah, I see why. Okay, someone say something.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Okay. Okay. So now I can hear you. Uh, is Mercury in retrograde again? I mean, it,
Always.
it feels like it's always.
It is, though. I'm going to tell you that Mercury is definitely, most definitely in retrograde right now. Not even a joke. It is.
Yeah, the technology piece is always fun. But okay, so hi, thank you guys for coming. I I am so grateful for all of you for this little community we have that we get to meet once a month and talk about all kinds of stuff that uh, bounces around my brain, and I get to, you indulge me to come and do this with me. So I appreciate every single one of you. And ah, Dwayne, hi Dwayne, you made it. Hi. That's so awesome. Okay. So, the topic that I wrote about that I wanted to talk about this week was one that I I definitely have struggled with in my own life, and that's the idea of, when we're on our path and we're trying to create anything that is positive in the world, whether it's a brick and mortar business, whether it's our career that we work in, whether we have our own business or just in the way that we want to show up to our friends, our family, and our community. When there's so much heaviness in the world of war and suffering, and uh, people seem angry and intolerant, it can feel, for me, it can feel very shallow. I start to feel shallow about me working on me, and me working on whatever my business is, and having these dreams, these goals that feel big. And I have in the past definitely let go of the wheel when I felt the heaviness of pain and suffering in the world. because I just I couldn't I couldn't come to terms with how me continuing was a good thing. It felt like it was unevolved or uh, what is the word I'm looking for? It felt like I was just living in my own little bubble and not really engaging. But during those times when I did allow it to affect me and I did get, more depressed and started to get smaller and think, there's people in the world that don't even know if they're going to live through the next day. And I should just be happy with the fact that I have shelter over my head, I have food, um, I have people in my life, I have money in the bank, or even if it was paycheck to paycheck, I still had a job. And what would happen is it felt like that actually ended up bringing the collective energy down. So what I mean by that is if you look at the world like it is energy, everything is energy. And you look at the part that feels dark and heavy, that starts to like almost like a storm. It builds and it builds on itself, and then it creates this heavy energy. More heavy energy is not going to counteract what we don't want to see. And this is where it gets hard, because if you're an empathetic person, if you are a caring person, if you're a very aware person, being able to step into seeing yourself and the light that you bring and that positive energy that you bring as the antidote is hard, because it feels like it's denying what is. It's denying what you're seeing and feeling. So I want to talk about today another way of viewing this. And everyone has, we all have the right to view things however we feel works for us. But because I have taken my foot off the gas and I've watched what it's done to me, what it's done to the people around me, and when things do shift, which they always have done, all of this stuff operates on a kind of pendulum swing. It seemed like the people who were able to keep their energy going were the ones they were actually bringing more positive into the world. And when things did shift, they were in a position to be more effective in bringing into the world the type of experiences and energy and light and uh, support of one another that I would want to bring in the world too. Does this, are you guys following me at all? Just let me know if like this makes sense to you. You could just nod, or if it doesn't, just let me know. Um, so here's some of the ways that in the past I have dealt with feeling and seeing injustices in the world, feeling and seeing the weight of the world. Um, righteous anger. Righteous anger. There's, having worked with people in the way that I have, I don't think that there are many feelings and ways of being that hurt people more than righteous anger. And I call it righteous anger because the reason that the person is angry is true, right? It's based on a truth. It's how that truth is displayed, because so many times when we feel righteous anger, we lash out. We lash out at people who don't see the world in the same way as us. We maybe become like a hammer looking for a nail. We create distance between us and others because we're prickly. Someone could say the wrong thing and we might jump down their throats. It creates distance. People have a hard time connecting. And it is, to repeat a phrase that has been used a ton, and you've all heard it, but it is that swallowing poison and waiting. Well, in that usually says waiting for someone else to die, but this is like swallowing poison and waiting for the world to change. And righteous anger is effective in moments. It can be very effective in moments. Sometimes I'm trying to think of what. So I just was reading, I don't know if you guys know Suki Baxter, but I was just reading a post that she had put up. And the post was about a woman who is a doctor who suddenly was like collapsing in the supermarket, super sick, couldn't even stand, had to have the ambulance come. Basically, what happened was she was taken to the hospital under the guise of she was having an anxiety attack. She had to fight to get treatment. She was screamed at, yelled at, told she was faking it. She's saying to the people in the emergency room, I am a doctor. I am a doctor. This is what's happening to me. Like, you have to help me. And they just left her. And it wasn't until the physician came on and realized that she was going septic that they were able to get her the care. And so here's where righteous anger can come into play, because she's furious. And she's like, what about people who aren't doctors? I'm diagnosing myself and telling them what I need. And and I have the language and they still wouldn't listen to me. So what is happening to other people? Well, this is righteous anger because this can help, right? She's reached out to the hospital. She's not just voicing into the void of Facebook. She's reached out to the hospital. She's trying to bring awareness to this. That makes sense. But you guys, can you see the difference between effective righteous anger and then having it be part of our identity? Carrying it around where you're looking for a place to project it onto. And it really keeps your own energy heavier. And it doesn't allow for connection. And one of the things that I feel that is really, really, it's really important here is that we are losing our ability to connect. Because what is happening is we are creating more and more intolerance of hearing from people who do not align with us. And I think that one of the problems with that for us is that we become more and more rigid we aren't able to have conversations to learn about other perspectives. Hearing someone's other perspective does not mean that you align with them. But if we can't have tolerance, it's like having tolerance for the intolerant, right? That allows discussion. It allows connection. It allows other people to see what we're doing without feeling judged and maybe getting curious about it. Because if we are holding the space that we feel is more inclusive and loving to other people, to animals, whatever it may be, we don't want to only be in contact with people who feel the same way because it's such a missed opportunity. We want it to be on display and open so that people can ask questions, people can observe without feeling like if they see this differently, that they're going to be attacked. Let me see something. Yeah, so equal rights movement. So Dwayne asked, how does this compare to the equal rights movement of the past and current? So again, it's that idea of righteous anger. And this is just my opinion. Okay. Righteous anger, when used effectively, is a tool. It is something you take out and then you can put away. So in other words, if you feel that, like, if that woman with the hospital felt like, I'm going to get people together and we're going to stand outside and we're going to picket the hospital until this happens, until, there's an investigation or whatever it is, that's righteous anger used effectively. If that person goes to every party, family gathering, event, the workplace, and has the energy of anger and is spewing it at people, that can be the part that starts to create what we don't want. Does that make sense? Like, it starts to then, people pull away from that energy, right? It's not relational. It's not, let's have a conversation. Oh, I didn't know that, tell me more. It's more like that initial trying to size up if someone is on your side or not, or on your team or not, so that you can either put them in a box and put them away and judge them, or you can put them in with your group. And because of the fact that we're seeing what that does, we're seeing what that does on a global scale when we become intolerant of people who are not like us, when we project onto others. I see a lot of the projection. There's a lot of projection happening too, which I think just creates more suffering. People say one thing and then they're told what they believe. It's kind of like a pathological relationship playing out in real time in the world. Someone says one thing, and then there is a dog pile of saying, well, I'm going to tell you what you mean by what you said. I'm going to give you a label by what you said. And then I'm going to have an argument with you about the thing that I just projected onto you. And I'm not going to ask questions. And I'm not going to ask you to clarify, because I'm searching for how to find disconnection, not connection. So before I go, I want to go into a few other aspects because we started with anger. Does anybody have any questions about this or want to share anything about this? Okay. Um, the other feelings that I can have in and around intense suffering in the world is to have guilt for what I have. I can feel guilty that I have these things. I have my health, I have my family. I don't worry about war and bombs dropping on me or anything that's happening in the world. Like that is not my personal experience. And the thing is that is kind of not taking in the big picture, which is the big picture is this, is that none of us know what tomorrow holds for any of us. And there's not a single person that comes into this world that doesn't experience pain and loss. All of us will experience pain and loss, every single one of us. So when your life is blessed and you're not experiencing pain and loss, that's a time to really be present, to really be soaking that up and enjoying that and kind of creating that light. Because so imagine this. These are hard concepts for me to try to explain, but imagine this. So there's, if you look at a picture of the earth, right? And then we can use colors, right? And there's colors, darker colors where things are really hard and going badly, and then lighter colors where things are better, let's just say, not perfect, but better. If the places that are lighter colors looked at the darker colors and said, oh, I feel so bad. I feel so guilty. I'm so upset. And brought their light down. There's no beacon. There's nothing out there for people to feel like there's something better. We could work towards something better, or we can get through this to something better. And I don't know why terrible things happen. I don't know why there's so much pain and suffering. There has been tomes and books and tons written on this subject because none of us really know why. But the idea of a collective unconscious, a collective energy, if we look at the idea of that we are all pieces of a whole, and that enlightenment and evolution and love being the biggest force for change, then that is what I hold on to. And I can't tell you why these things happen. I mean, there's ideas around it being like consciousness is evolving, like it's it is this constant struggle to bring that light and evolution into the world. And sometimes the things that when it goes down into the dark is on the other side of that is when so much more light gets revealed. And that's happened throughout history. And we haven't been here that long. I mean, when I was a kid, I thought like this is what's been around forever. But then you get older and you're like, wait, just a few hundred years? Like since actuals, like the civilization that's more like we live in agriculture and stuff, and you look back and it's only a matter of thousands of years when it's mind-boggling. But if you think about it, if you look at the world and if you took away countries and you took away races and you took away religions and you took away all of those things and you went back to a more primitive view and you're like, wow, look at, yes, like this is a lot. It's a lot, but it's also happening exponentially faster and faster and faster. And if it's a matter of like bringing in the light, so many times the ways that we respond to pain and suffering, and me too, is that if I see that, especially if it's an animal or a child, it's like fury just comes. Like I just want to like, that person, like you just want to hurt that person or, throw them in jail or whatever. And I get that. And some of that is sometimes people who are violent need to be removed from the general population because they are dangerous. But the harder thing is to look at what created that and how can I apply a more loving, open energy to the day-to-day in my life so that I don't feed that. It's kind of like driving, and you get cut off and then you're like, flipping somebody off. And then that person had that energy. And then you just went, oh, I see you and I'll match you. And I'm going to add to that energy. And now I've been slimed. You're slimed more. And now let's see, maybe I'll pass it on to somebody else instead of really allowing ourselves to start being more conscious and present to how we are, because it's not about wars around the world. It's about how are we treating each other right here, right now. And every single one of us has a huge ability, a huge opportunity to bring that into our day-to-day life. And I'm not saying you won't get upset. Like a lot of times I think with cars, it's like you get scared and then the fear turns right into anger, but then you get to choose. You get to choose after the initial reaction. You can go, okay. One of the things I had learned when I took these Kabbalah courses when I moved to Los Angeles, as you do, anyone who knows about California. And one of the things I loved about it was this idea of being proactive and being reactive. And most of us are so in our heads that we end up being reactive. So if that car cuts us off, speeds past us, right? The reaction, like jerk, whatever, like flip them off, freak out, whatever. But to be proactive means you're not adding to that energy. So what I used to do, because I bring up cars a lot, because that's the time that you'll see me lose my cool the most. In fact, we had a swear jar when my kids were little. And if I swore, I had to put money in their swear jar. And at one point, I had to say, it doesn't apply to driving because I was going broke. But I had to I had to figure out how to shift that. So what I did was I started practicing a proactive mindset that I applied to those drivers so that I didn't go there. So if someone sped by me, it might scare me at first, cut me off. But then the proactive thought was, what if their kid's in the hospital? What if they just found out their dog got out and isn't running down the road? And it's funny because people sometimes will go, yeah, but aren't you just lying to yourself then? Isn't that just, a bunch of bullshit? And that person, like now you're just living in airy fairy land. But what's funny about it is like, you don't know it's not true. How does it feel when you think the thought that the person is a jerk, is entitled, it doesn't care about anyone, is driving crazy, could hurt other people. Like, how does that feel in the body? Versus there's an emergency. That person might be running to help someone, their kid, it feels different. And since you don't know either way, why not choose the thought that makes you feel differently and more compassionate than the one that creates more rigidity and holds on to more anxiety in the body, which you might bring in very subtle ways to the next people you see or the next environment that you're in. So having anger, having guilt, maybe feeling depressed or small, I want you to think for a second about how you hold your energy and how your energy feels in the best scenarios, like when you're feeling your best. And then I want you to imagine it, maybe past experiences or what you, maybe you can just visualize what this would be like and feel it. How does your energy react to someone when you're around someone who's angry? How does your energy respond when you're around someone who's feeling very depressed and helpless? Michelle?
I think, doesn't it depend, right? Because I'm a big proponent of Abraham Hicks and the emotional guidance scale. And I think if you're in a place of depression and something gets you angry, it's a move up. Or if you're angry and something gets you frustrated, it's like a move up, right? Because technically, from a very physics place, you can't get from anger to joy without sort of stepping through all of the other emotions on that ladder.
Yeah.
So sometimes, like you said, sometimes anger is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a matter of like not staying there, right?
Right.
Like if you have depression, I think, and the only reason I'm chiming in is because I dealt with depression for a very long time. And then I would step up to anger, which was like a relief for my system. But nobody wants to be around anger. And everyone's like, oh my God, anger, hypothetically.
Yeah.
And now, and then as someone that dealt with depression for a very long time, then you're like, oh, right, anger. And then you go right back into depression and you ping pong instead of like feeling the anger and like, or I would know as a depressed person that anger was the next logical step and felt so much better than depression. It's just a matter of then pushing through it and getting to the next level, like not staying there, not living there. So it's like, I've had a lot of thoughts while you were talking, and I feel like everything is so nuanced, right? Because like someone cuts you off in traffic and you're like, son of a bitch. And it's like, it might be okay to get that little burst of anger out and then check yourself, right? So I
Right.
totally agree with that. But I also think that like, anger's got its time and place and purpose in that emotional scale. I think it's just not about, camping out there.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that I wanted to say too is that it's not about making anyone wrong or feel bad for being angry or depressed. The reason I want you to feel into your own energy of how it feels when you're not angry and when you're not depressed and you're in a good place, to be around that, so that we can see the difference of what it brings to the collective. And the reason that I wanted to do this in this talk was, and please, anybody, even if you think like it's opposite to what I'm saying, I want to have this conversation in a real way. And I wanted to do it here and not in a post or anything, because just like this, like I could talk about depression and someone that could feel bad that I was saying something about depression. Here we can talk it out, right? So I've experienced depression. Depression runs in my family. Uh, so, and I don't think any feeling is wrong. It's more about this talk is more about when how these feelings sometimes we can be choosing them because we think that these feelings are beneficial to the greater good, but they may not be because we're thinking they're actually doing something. It's almost like people who go on Facebook and rant as if that did something to change the plot of the people who are suffering, or you know what I mean? Like it's not, but what energy does that post have? And what is it putting out there? And what is the tuning fork that you just created? And who's jumping on that? And what snowballs from there? So it's more about not judge. I don't want to judge anybody for having anger or for having depression, but I just do want us to see in a bigger picture how that affects the whole, and how when we do have the choice, how these better choices not only help you, but it does help the whole. Make a sense. So thank
I was
you.
just gonna, I was just gonna like just to bookend that. It's like and you brought up Kabbalah, which I thought was lovely. Is like how do you bring light to the situation? Right? It's already dark. It's already heavy, and like you talk about Facebook and everybody just sort of ranting into a void, and like it's like compound interest, right? It doesn't just double, but it compounds, and it's intense, and it makes the whole world feel heavy, and it's like sure, that's tragic and all of that. But if you're just screaming into the void and dumping on and adding on, you're really not helping anyone, especially not yourself, because then you feel like shit. I've done it. I've been there. And I like it because it's a really nice reminder to go, yes, that's a frustrating situation, but how do I bring light to it? Which is very much a Kabbalah, underlining whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bring
Yeah.
light. Yeah.
Yes, fine.
Ding, ding.
Yeah, and those, those posts tend to just kind of pull in all the people either who feel the same way or the people who feel the opposite, and nobody can even tolerate anything that is not 100% one way or the other. Um, and that's where we're losing our ability to debate and talk and share. Um, and I don't think that that goes along with true enlightenment or evolution of our consciousness. So thank you. I'm gonna grab Bridget. Hi, Bridget.
Hi. Thank you everybody for this conversation. I had a couple things pop up, and that was I've also followed Abraham for I don't know, the last 24 years. So I know the scale that you're talking about, and I was thinking about how for me, if I hit an anger, and I'm not going to get to joy, but it's because I need to kind of sit in the curiosity of my anger. What's the anger actually relate back to? Because otherwise I'm never going to get up to the joy part of it if I don't piece through, is this fear, is this what is it from? And usually most angers from fear, I have found for myself. But I was thinking about um the the way of the world and stuff right now. I was thinking back to, I was 28 years old. My husband had just died. I had a miscarriage while he was in the ICU for 21 days, and I didn't tell anybody. I had a 4-year-old child, and I was making $7 an hour. And I went to a new job where I was going to make $9 an hour 2 weeks after he passed away. And I'm sitting at my desk, and a Mariah Carey song, Tears from Heaven, I don't know, some song comes on, and I'm crying at my desk. I'm trying to hold it together because I'm at this new job, and I know that everyone knows my situation. I don't want to be that person. And a woman walks up to my doorway. She leans against the doorway, and she has the most angry, hateful face on her, which was shocking because in the month of time that I had gone through, I had experienced a lot of love and compassion, and it kind of rocked me back. And she was so angry. And she looked at me and she said, "What are you crying about?" You, you pretty little thing, you bat your eyes, you get whatever you want. You have no effing reason to be crying. And she walked away. And it rattled me so much that I left. Like I left for the day. I grabbed my purse, I walked out of my office. And I didn't want to tell anybody at first. My boss was also a friend of mine. She owned the mortgage company I worked for. And I had to tell her, I had to call and say, "Hey, here's what happened." And she said to me that that woman's daughter had committed suicide in the same month that my husband had died. And so I had this person there who I could not, literally, I could not suffer enough to make her feel any better. There was nothing, she just had that kind of anger. And there, none of my suffering, none of what I went through mattered.
Yeah.
And in that time frame, I realized I didn't want to be there. I didn't want that to happen to me. I didn't want that. I didn't want to do that to anyone else in any other way. And so I didn't live into a false, positive thing. I didn't jump directly to joy, but I saw what could happen. And I could only have compassion and love for her.
Mhm.
And after a certain amount of time, her and I talked. And one day I told her what that did that day to me. And she ended up leaving the company, but I was the only person that she ever could have like open conversation with. So even being able to get curious about another person's situation was what changed it. I did not have love and compassion for her at the beginning. I will tell you all the bad words when I got home, all the bad words.
Yeah, sure.
All the throwing of things like that. But I just tried to like root myself in curiosity from then on about how other people could be. The traffic thing is funny because I always try to remind myself, like, I'm not stuck in traffic. I am traffic, right? Like I'm traffic to the person behind me.
Right.
How many I would not, I mean, would any of us know how many times we've cut someone off and we had no idea? Don't know because that's like we just don't know.
So true.
But yeah, so just trying to acknowledge that we're not going to always get it right. We're not going to always, but if we can kind of stay in some kind of curiosity, and sometimes we're not going to know, like there's so many things in this world right now where somebody may be thinking a certain way or functioning a certain way. And if we were to unscrew back where that's coming from, I don't even know if it could be from this lifetime. Like we don't know, what did that grandparent go through? Where is this coming from in this person, this corkscrew, this DNA that we have? So if we can all just live from a place of compassion, I still get angry.
Yeah, we're human.
That's because I'm here to have the human experience, and that's going to be this huge meter, right? I'm here to have it all. I'm here to, take it all in. And that's the only way I can have compassion for anyone around me is knowing, oh, in this moment, I'm tacked at joy. They're taking in something else.
Yeah.
So that's what's been helping me, and a lot of that trying not to stay in what if, this might happen, that might happen. That's the energy of living not in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or even yeah, I don't know. All of it's a little bit crazy, but that's all.
Well, I think that like based on what you're saying too, it reminds me that underneath anger, I mean, I remember hearing that under anger is pain, but I think under anger is pain and fear. Pain and fear live under anger.
Yeah.
And anger is a response that feels like you have power over the thing that hurt you or that you're afraid of.
Yeah.
But it's not real power. It's like if you have a sharp tongue, and why are you smiling, Michelle? If you have a sharp tongue and you see someone else with a sharp tongue say something mean or whatever, and you want to jump in, your power is not in that sharp tongue, because there's going to be somebody out there with a sharper tongue than you.
Yeah.
And so you are actually going down to the level at which you don't want to be and trying to win in a way that just brings more of what I'm imagining most of us don't want to bring into the world. So look at the ways that you feel like you have power and question them, because typically real power is not rigid. Kind of like
It's
the,
about living forward, right? Like it's living in that moment of that. Like you were talking about how to feel grateful, you have your house or you have food, you're not worrying about those things. But that's gratitude backwards. That's gratitude for what I already have. That's not living gratitude forward if we kind of must be nice ourselves, which is so uncomfortable.
oh, the must be nice.
Yeah.
Having worked with tons of affluent people, children who grew up in affluent families, but even working with, household names, it's so crazy that people who have so much compassion in every other area will have no compassion for people that they feel have more than them in a way. Like if you're loaded financially, if you're beautiful or talented or brilliant or any of these things, all of a sudden they're not human. They're dehumanized and there's no compassion. And I will tell you that I wouldn't trade places with 99% of those people, because there is so much toxicity in the families and in the environment that you don't see. The PR team does not let that get out, okay? So these are human beings, and if there's any group of human beings that the compassion is off the table, I think that just hurts us. Doesn't mean that you have to like what is happening or like what they do, or you're not in agreement. But I mean, there are places, you look in Africa, these little boys, their families are murdered in front of them, and they have one choice: to pick up a gun or die. You join or die. And then the brainwashing goes into it. And then you're looking at, I might be looking at a 25-year-old man who just committed a heinous act. And I go, you're the problem. Look at what you're doing. They're also the victim. It's like a snake eating its tail. It just keeps going. What's going to break that? More killing, more violence? Not saying that sometimes you don't have to stand up to things and go, like, I'm not saying it's an either or, but if you don't address the toxicity and the mental health and all the stuff that's creating the soup that this is growing out of, adding punishments and violence to it without doing that is just it's not going to heal it. It's not going to change. It'll shift. It'll shape shift into something else. Sonia or Tom here. Not sure which. So Tom here can unmute yourself. Thank you, Bridget.
We've kind of moved on a little bit.
I know, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, as a recovering ultra hyper independent person, first I want to thank this group of people and the Schiller group for letting me be part of it and helping me learn and grow. So, going back to the cars and driving,
Mhm.
one day I was coming into town and I've got an old pickup with a hot rod motor in it. The car tried to pass me, so I sped up and made sure that they didn't get the pass.
Oh,
Did this all the way into town, and just as we get down into town, I'm thinking, this is kind of stupid because what if this person is a nurse headed to the hospital for an emergency? And as I thought that, the car turned towards the hospital. So the other side of that is cars that are driving too slow. And I'm not. I slip back into the old ways once in a while,
mhm.
throw out a swear word or the frustration of somebody going too slowly. But whenever I'm conscious enough to, I look at that car now and go, well, what if that's grandma? What if that's my grandma?
Yeah.
Would I be pissed? No. What if she's
Mhm.
parked a little crooked and that's my grandma? No.
Mhm.
But the other thing I've found too is I have a choice now because I used to live quite a bit in that angry indignation world,
Yeah.
and I can choose where I go most of the time. And you were asking how I was going to post this on Schiller's site. How does the world around you, how is it different now that you are different now? And I found people to be more generous.
Mhm.
My students learn better and faster and are way more appreciative. And basically, the whole world is a little more kind and gentle. Not to say there's, especially go to the political world, there's a lot of nonsense there, but everything since I've changed and been a part of this group, my world has changed on the exterior a lot. And the using anger brought up a story. I used it one time when we were building our house. People that were working for us were parking in the street, and the snowplow guy came by and got upset and called the police, and we had to go around and around. The police told me, he says, well, just go in and talk to the city works people in the morning. So I did and went in. Sonny and I went in and talked to the foreman there, and he would not listen to us, would not listen to any reason, because we went in a very non-confrontational way and wanted to, what I would just wanted to say was, what can I do to please you guys and be better about all this? And he would not listen. Every time I would start to talk, he'd interrupt and get loud. Sonny would try and talk, same thing. So after a little while of this, I stepped up within a couple of inches of his face, and in a very, very loud voice, I said very forcefully, you need to listen to me. And he kind of rocked back a little ways. And out of the corner of my eye, I could see the secretary just giggling. And he was quiet. I said, hey, we're here to work this out with you. And I explained our side. And in a little while, everybody was smiling and happy. So the ability to channel that at the proper time and not just live it all the time.
Mhm.
is so powerful and important.
Well, I think that like that assertiveness was a pattern interrupt, right? Like it was like that. If anybody's ever watched the way Anthony Robbins works, when he's talking to somebody, he's touching them, he's doing all this big stuff, like because it breaks up the neural pathway of this is the way I talk, this is the way, when people talk about things that have happened to them or traumas, they tend to hold their body in exactly the same way every time they talk about it. They talk about their fears, they hold their body, they use a tone of voice. When you interrupt that pattern, suddenly they're awake. They're not unconscious. He was running an unconscious pattern, it sounds like, in that situation, that your assertive, hey, like clapping in his face, all of a sudden he's out of it and he's present and he could hear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we left there with everybody smiling and happy and
great.
friends.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the driving, one of the things, and I know we hit on this because it's just universal, pretty much, like it's such a universal thing that people talk about or have struggled with. But the Eckhart, I love Bridget saying, when you're sitting in traffic, you're going, oh, look at this traffic. And then going, I'm traffic, right? I am part of traffic. I have participated in what makes this traffic. Eckhart Tolle talks about having expectations is what leads to most of our suffering. And I thought, how ridiculous is it that every time I get in my car, I have this expectation that I will get from point A to point B with no interruptions, no issues from any other car, no traffic, no nothing. And then when things happen, now I'm dysregulated, I'm frustrated, I'm annoyed, I'm whatever, and that will never happen, that we get to a point in history that I will get in my car and drive places without things happening that get in the way. Like it'll never happen. And yet I have this unconscious program running that every time I get in the car, that is exactly what's going to happen. It's insanity. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Tom. Joy, my love, haven't seen you since Bali. Hello.
Oh, it's so great. And so lovely to be a part of this group. And it's taken me a while to find you.
It's okay.
Oh, funny, funny, funny. And remind me not to share a ride with you anytime soon. But this is what I'm walking away with. I mean, this is what's come to me. And I hadn't heard the term for a while, righteous anger, but I do believe that's something that I am going to experience in this new year coming. And yeah. So not willing to just obey in advance, as some people have said. And to really,
What does that mean, to obey in advance? I'm a little bit
it's
intrigued.
like Timothy Snyder that wrote Tyranny, and he's got a little booklet about, and it came out the last time Trump was elected, and it's all the things that if we are not speaking up, then we're obeying. And to think about obeying, we learned that early in school. We've learned to be compliant. We haven't realized our own power, and we're way more powerful and creative than anybody has ever told us or that we know or acknowledge. So that's part of that. And what's coming to me is also what you've touched upon is where we want to come from is from our heart.
Mm-hmm.
And it's time. We've all spent, all our time in our head and in our culture and our programming. It's been coveted, our intellect. And I'm not downgrading our intellect. It's gotten us where we are today. But our heart is way more powerful. I forget if it's 100 times more powerful than our brain. And where we want to come from is our being and who we are, our divine essence. And nobody's really told us about that we're peace, love, and harmony. We are love. And the only thing that gets in the way is what I say, contaminated thinking that we're not, right?
Mhm.
We get caught up in the illusionary nature of thought. And part of me has been thinking, well, what other country would I want to visit? And thank you so much for taking me to Bali, because I feel sometimes I want to run. I want to run. And I just thought, well, I got my family here. I need to be, present, and nobody knows what the future is going to hold. And I want to be in the present, and for all of us to shine our light, and that gives permission for everyone else. And it's got a ripple effect of positivity, and I'm an Abraham Hicks follower too. And so really claiming who we are, our divine essence, and how we create our experience, from inside out, how we are interpreting how things are. So I think Sonia and Tom, whatever, is like nothing has to change in our circumstances. And then everything can change by a different perspective, that we can see things differently without needing to change anything, because we know where our experience comes from. Anyway, and I think that maybe this group is just an hour. It's lovely to be in the group. I
Oh,
miss
it's
you.
more than an hour. We're
Oh,
going.
is it?
Yeah,
I have to run.
we tend to drag on, but I do want to say that the thing about the political part, and I don't want to get into saying names or parties in this. I welcome everyone here. And I think that what happens is that when we start, Eckhart Tolle talks about, we tend to we catastrophize the future, and we don't know the future. None of us do. And what happens when we catastrophize the future is that then we are living as if that catastrophized version of the future is happening right now. And we take up arms about things that haven't even happened yet. When he says, you have everything in your power to deal with whatever happens in the future when it happens, but you cannot deal with it in advance. And when you try to, you live as if it is happening in the now. And so, yes, to righteous anger when needed, but if you're preparing to have righteous anger, that's to me a sign that things could be going off course, because you're already expecting to see the nail for your hammer. And people from all walks of life, this is where I see a lot of toxicity, is that people are judging other people for who they vote for, what their religion is, what their sexual orientation is. Everyone is putting other people in a box and labeling it without asking any questions of that person. And then we get to rage against the box we put them in. And that doesn't build relational exchanges. This doesn't create rich diversity and the ability to talk about things that every single thing in this world exists on a scale. And when we can't talk about that scale without being on a polar side, this side, and a polar side, that side, and nobody in the middle is allowed to exist, because we are going to decide where you actually fall. We're not going to hear what you're saying. We're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. We're looking for keywords. We're looking for stuff. And then we get to write you off. And then we don't have to have this idea that problems are complicated. These are complex issues in our world. As things go, like you're trying to do things for farmers and people in the city at the same time. People have, if you travel the world, one of the things that I love about travel we did Bali for is that the beauty in this is that you leave the environment that you are familiar with, right? And you go to a place where people see things completely different from you, and it works. And suddenly, when you see people living with different beliefs, you go, oh, there's more than one way to have this human experience. Don Miguel Ruiz says that we're all living a dream that we just made up. Right? People just made this up and we got inserted in it in a certain time and place and space but it's all just made up. It could have been made up differently. We could be living differently. So I would say try not to buy into it in ways that make you intolerant and rigid and afraid.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think another trip to Bali would do it.
If my daughter wasn't having a baby next month, we would have been going. But
yeah, well,
next
lovely
year.
to see you and Carrie, and I'll drop in again. Thank you so much.
Please, please. So great to see you.
Great to see you.
Is this making sense?
Absolutely. I mean, this is an awesome conversation. I really feel inept given what everybody has shared. I mean, on the wisdom scale, I feel like I'm about a 2. and everybody else is like an 8 or a 9.
Well, because you're here with all us wise people, Nancy, you're just grandfathered in. So it's shared. You're now a wizard.
But it's interesting. I think I trigger stack anger.
Explain.
It always takes a lot for me to get angry. I believe I'm very good at having things happen and just letting it go. But when I really start to look at things, and I don't think I've done it recently, but I think it more happened really when I was working, that there would be an incident and I would tell myself I'd let it go, but it was the first rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
And then there'd be another one and another one, and they might be weeks, months apart. And then there would be one, and then I would just blow up. And it always confused me about where that came from, because I didn't feel like I was that angry. But it's amazing what the horses have taught me. And hanging out with this bunch of people that are so awesome.
And, how about looking, sometimes it's just a change of perspective, right? So think of it this way. Every time something happens that makes us angry, let's say, and our reaction is that we have to hold that in and pretend that nothing's wrong. We're out of we're not in congruence. And we're not being honest with ourselves or the other person. So the other person is now operating under the delusion that there's no problem until there is a problem. And when we get to that point, they may be totally shocked because we didn't give them any inclination all along that this wasn't sitting right with us. I think that the piece that's important is to sit and think about first, is this about them or is this just an inside job? Like, does this have nothing to do with them? It just reminded me of something that is still a wound for me. Or is it actually something that this person has done or said?
I would be willing to bet mostly it's about something in me.
Great. So then what you would want to do is sit with that and then maybe share it with the other person, taking full responsibility for it, right? So it could look like, it's funny. You said that thing to me yesterday, and I felt my whole body clench. I don't know if you noticed or not, but I tried to hide it. But I went home and I was wondering why that bothered me so much, because it didn't seem like it was that big of a deal. But I realized that because my mother used to say blah, 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 or oh, I just spilled tea all over myself. Or I'll just be getting these tissues, or because my boss talked to me that way, or because that's the thing I've always been afraid of about myself. And now I'm wondering if you're thinking that. I realized I was creating this whole story and had this whole feeling around it, but it was all in me. And the reason that that is really, really healthy is because sometimes we think we're really hiding stuff that we're not. And people are picking up on these like micro expressions and these little things. And you know what we do when we pick up on that? We think it's about us. And we think you're judging us, or that, we're screwed up or we did something wrong. And then we might pull back or be confused. And this is like clear in the air, and you're taking total accountability for it. And wow, talk about a way of actually shifting neural pathways, because now you're not just sitting home with your precious, right? My precious pain or my precious anger. You're going, no, I'm going to let this play out. I'm going to address this head on, not from a place of fear. A lot of us are afraid because what we're afraid of is that if we get activated, we're going to maybe say something or behave in a way that we can't take back. So really, we don't trust ourselves. It's really not about the other person. It's about whether or not we trust ourselves to maintain our level groundedness throughout a conversation that could go anywhere. What's funny is we don't say these things. We think them, and we'll explain them to other people, and we'll explain to our friends. The problem is but we don't say it to the actual person. How freeing would it be to say, I was afraid to bring this up to you because I was afraid that maybe our conversation would go in a direction that got me really upset, and I would then say something. And I don't want to do that, right? And so this is actually me coming to you because I value this relationship and I want to be honest. I want to be honest about, because maybe you sense something and I don't want you thinking that you did anything wrong.
It's a big vulnerability.
Yes. 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 But boy, like talk about, can you imagine if we all talk to each other that way? Can you imagine the clearing that would just be constantly happening, where you wouldn't be walking into the rooms where you're like, ooh, what is happening in here? Because we would just be acknowledging, and we wouldn't be in defense mode. How many of you know people who are so defended and they don't want you to see their weakness. They don't want you to judge them. And in the way of not wanting that, they're really big and their energy is very powerful. But the funny thing is that we all see them for exactly who they are. They're not fooling anyone, no one. But they think they are, and they think that they fool them by controlling them. You know, you will never feel safe around me to say something that might hurt my feelings. You'll never feel safe around me. So that's how I protect myself. But I also built a wall that I'm stuck behind. So I always look for that in me of, is there any part of me playing out that dynamic where I'm trying to avoid a conversation or avoid people seeing me and try to own that part of me as being human. And, you know, yeah, like I can get upset or activated when someone yells at me, right? Someone raises their voice and yells at me. That can throw me, it can make it hard for me to keep my grounding. But I have to have ways that I start to cultivate of how to handle that when someone else is dysregulated and give myself permission to walk away, to say, well, I'll talk about this later, to give myself permission that I don't have to meet at a place where it's not good for me. Right? Give myself permission. Like someone yells at me, like, yeah, I'm gonna have to come back to this, right? I don't have to stay. Did I just go on too big of a tangent, or does it make sense? Okay. Holly?
Oh my gosh, you just described my daughter, who I live with, who's 45. Okay. And I live there because I help out with my 8-year-old grandson and have done so since birth. And I recognize, and I moved out once to kind of see how that would work, but I know that it's probably not healthy. And it's also, though, an opportunity for me to learn responding instead of reacting to the elevated, I just get blamed for everything. I mean, I just can't do anything right, because she's so big and controlling and micromanaging, even the way I peel a potato, but I love her. She's my daughter. But anyways, I so resonated with that conversation. All this conversation is beautifully, guys. Thank you so much for showing up today. But I'm doing this book study, and what he's talking about is the emotional charge attached to the anger, the fear, the frustration, and we're going to be integrating that when we feel that felt sensation. And so for me, sometimes it starts in the head. Oh, here we go again. She's going to attack me, but I'm going to keep my cool, and then I never do, right? And so, but I need to start feeling into what my body feels like first. So, like in the traffic, I deal with traffic all the time, and I get frustrated, but I don't feel it I don't know where it is in the physicality yet. So I'm working on that part. But anyways, it was just fascinating that what you guys are all talking to and pointing to is the very thing that's like next on my trajectory of self evolution into the self is that. And anyway, so I appreciate you guys. I just wanted to share that.
Well, I appreciate that too, Holly, because it's funny, like that having that in your home is very difficult. It's very difficult when you don't have healthy ways to communicate in your home. So, but I will say what's interesting is that every day people, someone in your position could show up with the expectation that today maybe she'll leave me alone. And then my expectation, and I'm on edge, I'm waiting. And then when that expectation doesn't play out, all that holding then just goes, right? But what if you expected it to happen instead? What if you woke up every day and expected and accepted that this is what the situation looks like? This is what, so now there's not resistance in you. I'm not saying to agree. That's very different. What I'm saying is that you accept and expect it, and then there's no resistance. So it helps you not waste your energy, and it doesn't add to the energy that she's putting out. So it's just a small tweak that you can see how that works for you.
Well, it's interesting that when we were talking about energy, I can tell when she's coming down the stairs. She works at home upstairs. When the energy that is around her, if it's negative or positive, when she's in a positive state, man, it is, we are all lit up because she's lit up. But and there may not even be a frustration look on her face. You can just feel it. I feel it. But I don't know exactly where I feel it. I just know it's yucky. Maybe it's my chest. I'm not sure.
It's a toxic way of being in a relationship. And the way you explain it already is that she is the one that sets the tone. Nobody else sets the tone. So already you know that the dynamic is not in a healthy place.
Well, and my grandson's one of the reasons why I stay, or I want to stay. And I think about the energy that he, might feel in that. But when she's directing her attention to him, it's completely different, right? I mean, it's a new person, It's just not me. You know how sometimes we talk about it's easier to treat family
badly.
Yeah, okay, I didn't want to say that word. Then we do our friends.
Yeah, why don't you want to say the word?
I don't know, because good, bad, right, or wrong, I just don't want that in I don't know, because I don't want to say it. The
reason why I ask is because what's really toxic is when we start gaslighting ourselves about the situation that we're in. We become the ones that gaslight us. And so you got to be in your truth. And the truth is, even if you're annoying as hell, Holly, that doesn't mean that someone should treat you in the way that you're describing. Now, maybe in your situation, you being there is the best situation, and maybe it's not. I don't know. But don't lie to yourself, because that's when the cognitive distortions start happening. That's when you start believing that you are a pain in the ass or annoying, and you do peel the potatoes wrong, and nobody could ever be comfortable around you because you're always a pain in the ass, and you lose yourself.
Also is I don't tell the truth. I had made some bad financial I got scammed buying a horse on the internet, okay? All right, which is, and anyways, I didn't tell her. She would have been I just didn't tell her.
Sure.
And I was fighting with not fighting, I was putting my dissertation on paper to share with the banks, trying to get my money back, from credit cards and from cash. and I printed something out that described the whole situation, and I forgot about it, and the printer's in the office.
Mhm.
And she read it, and she came out and said, "Oh, Mom, do I provide such an unsafe environment that you couldn't be honest with me about this?"
And what did you say?
I said, "Yes."
Good.
I mean, I just had to be authentic then, right? I mean, it was the truth, but then I busted out crying and then had to leave the room. I couldn't face her. I don't know, but it was the softest, like compassionate
Mhm.
feeling I got from her in that moment, and maybe that's a starting place for us to communicate, to
But
break this down.
you need counseling with her. You
Yeah.
need someone. You will never, no, you need
Oh, okay.
counseling with someone. I would look up Terry Real. He has a counseling style called RLT, because the way that she has learned, and possibly, I'm obviously it's one-sided. I'm hearing but the
Mhm.
way that this dynamic is, this is a power dynamic. And if you don't have someone that can help be that middle person, then you're probably not going to be able to do it yourself. And I think of course, she loves you and she saw that, but that doesn't, here's where the cognitive dissonance happens even more. You saw her compassion. And in that moment, when you saw her compassion for you, you started questioning your view of her in the way she's been treating you, and makes it
Mhm.
more likely that the problem is you and not her, because look at how compassionate she is.
Right. And this book I'm doing is called The Presence Process, and it talks about that the events from childhood is what gets kind of stuck, and a lot of it is from when we're in the womb, right? It starts then, the felt perceptions that we carry
Mhm.
through our childhood. And I can just imagine, I was a single parent, had her at 18, originally was gonna adopt her out and change my mind in the 9th month. But
Mhm.
those feelings that I had as a child, as a young girl, pregnant, unwanted, and I think I think I feel sorry for what I have put her through, or possibly emotionally, from what I'm learning and all this stuff I'm learning, in that I just can offer grace. But I hear what you're saying, Christine. This isn't gonna feel its way out of it. I'm not gonna be able to, right. It's gonna
Or
need
love your way out of
professional
it.
help. Yeah, thank you. All
And
right. Well, I
here's
don't
the
want to
thing.
occupy all the
Well, no, but
conversation,
this
but
is important. This is important because you're demonstrating something very vulnerable. And I know that even demonstrating this comes with feelings of um, disloyalty to your daughter, feeling like you're, bad just to even talk about it, right? So I know that this is very brave. And I just want to say, I used to joke with my kids. Like it was a joke, but it was like a half joke, like if especially like they'd be mad at me. Usually the only times they were mad at me is if like they got in trouble and they were grounded or something. And I'd say, don't worry, you'll tell your therapist all about it one day, Um, and the thing is that we all fuck up our kids. We all fuck up our kids in some way. Even when we're trying to unfuck up our kids, the way we do it can have a pendulum swing over here that we couldn't even see, and that fucks them up that way. So the problem is that we only influence that. Like we only have that power when they're little. When they're grown, they are accountable for their actions. You cannot fix them. And believe me, you trying plays out a whole dynamic that never works. She is now, no matter what trauma she experienced as a child, no matter what happened, she is accountable for her actions and her healing as an adult. It can't be any other way.
I'm so glad I spoke up. Thank you. I mean, yeah. Good thing I see you on Friday, Bridget. She's in town. I'm so excited to hook up with her next week.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
I
awesome.
know. Well, thank you
All right.
guys for sharing.
I
Listening.
wanted to share just a couple things that we didn't get to because I never know where these talks are going to go, and I try not to wrestle them away from where they go naturally. But I did want to just put a few things in because part of the idea of this talk was around how to stay on your path when the world feels heavy. And I just wanted to the reason that and the reason I was talking about how it feels with how our energy affects others and how by saying how do you feel when you're around these other energies was only just to show that it does affect people. It does affect our environment, right? So if we see that we're powerful, energetic beings, then the more positive power that we bring in, the more positive light that we bring in, then that affects other people. And usually it raises them up. Like if I'm around somebody that's energy is higher and rocking brighter than mine, I love that because it brings me up. Now I get to feel that too. So just with it not being this is how you need to be every single day or else you're doing it wrong, but as a goal is like a North Star. As far as things being created during times of depression, war, all of those things, it makes me think of Louise Hay. And Louise Hay, she wrote this book called How to Heal Your Life, or You Can Heal Your Life, or something along those lines. And she was living in LA and she was going to West Hollywood during the AIDS crisis. And she was talking to groups of gay men about how self-love was the answer. And because she was doing this, and she wasn't huge, Louise Hay now is like, she's huge, right? But she wasn't huge. But word got out because even though everything looked dark at that moment, she stepped up and she was doing things that ultimately were for her benefit too. So what she did by getting in there and talking and sharing this with these groups, something got to Oprah. And then Oprah Winfrey had her on her show. And that's when she blew up. And from that, she started Hay House Publishing, which is huge. She started, the Hay Foundation, where she helps thousands of people when they need it the most. And she did that at a time of the country was in a recession and people were dying and suffering all around. And I think that it's really important to know that you doing the things that bring good things into your life and also affects the whole. Because it's definitely going to positively affect the people in your immediate circle, but you have no idea how it's going to affect everything in a bigger way. And if you can remember when maybe you feel like, oh, people constantly say, oh, no one has any money. That's not true. That is so not true. Did you know that there are more billionaires now than ever since the um the pandemic, since everything went down? There's more people. They said that there's something insane like every 30 hours another billionaire is created. Like, and not because the goal, I'm not saying the goal is to be a billionaire. I'm just saying like this idea that you hear over and over is like there's no money, everyone's broke, it's not true. And when you think that, that is a lack mentality. When you think that, it affects you. It affects the choices. It affects the energy you put out there. It affects what you'll try. The guy who started FedEx started it during a recession. And he got, I think I told you guys this, well, he got like a D minus because his whole idea for FedEx, he was in school for business and he did that as his thesis and he got a D minus. They said that'll never work. That would never work. During the Depression, you have two cereal companies, Kellogg's and Post. Kellogg's started advertising more. Post said, oh my God, it's a depression. We should hold on to our funds. They cut and slashed their advertising. And as depression lifted, Kellogg's blew the competition away. And I know this, I'm using simple examples because that's a cereal, maybe not saving the world, feeding people for sure, and we need that. But it gives you this idea of, well, if what I'm doing feels out of alignment because everyone's saying no one has money and everyone's suffering and stuff, but that's not true. Because if what you're doing wasn't needed, you wouldn't be the person that was bringing it into the world. It wouldn't be on your radar. How many people, I've talked to so many people who want to do these businesses with horses and humans, and then they're like, they've heard a million times, there's no money in horses. You can't make money in horses. And we're looking at people dead in the eye every day that they're making beautiful, abundant lives with horses. The horse industry is a billion-dollar industry. And it's shifting. Like, imagine if someone was in gas and said gas is the only thing, and somebody talked about electric cars, let's say, and people said, no, it's only gas. Well, we all know that we can't keep burning gas. So it's the people who are going, I think that there's people that are going to want a different option. But when you're the only person, right? When you're the little person and you're having the different option that nobody really knows about yet, and everyone's still choosing gas, it can feel like maybe this isn't something that's sustainable. You have to know that things change, and the earlier you're in and the more you're building and staying congruent, not trying to live in both worlds, not trying to be gas and electric at the same time so you get everybody. You want the people who want the choice. And then as that awareness grows, you're perfectly aligned to help spread it, to be an option. I was talking to this woman, I was like, people will say like, there's no money in horse training, right? Juliet says she works in this and she does well, right? Trying to read your, yes. And so many people tried to put you off, right? Right. So, but yet, if I'm here and I want a horse trainer who is more in alignment with this new way of looking at horses with collaborating and all of this, you know how hard it is to find someone like that? This idea that like there's no money in it or like everybody's already doing it or something is ridiculous. So Now is the time. You build no matter what, because you are the person that was brought into this world to bring this. You are the conduit. It's not just about you. When we think it's just about us, it can feel small and scary. It's not just about you. You were brought to bring this. You are the perfect vessel to bring this thing that lights you up, that you love doing, into the world. So the last thing that I will say is that, and this kind of goes back to expecting the expectation piece, right? What expectations do we carry with us into every single day that don't get met and then lead to these feelings that drain us? Peace exists nowhere in nature. Peace exists nowhere. Safety exists nowhere in nature. It doesn't mean that they don't have moments, but there is what we as humans try to get to, race on our little wheel and try so hard to get to, is a place where we are safe and protected from any disruption. And it doesn't exist. So how much energy is going into this, getting to that mountaintop, getting to that safety place where we have enough health, money, friends, whatever it is, we have enough that we're safe, but there's no such thing. How would we do things differently? How much more present would we be if we realized that that doesn't exist in nature? That change is the constant. What would we do differently? And would it bring us more present into our life? Instead of part of ourselves just focused on this future self or this future state. So if anyone has anything they want to say about that before we wrap it up. Hi, Sonia. Or hi, Sonia, one or the other.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you. Those last words were really meaningful to me and just like exactly where I am right now and what I need to hear. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you, everyone. I really love these talks, and I'm just so grateful for all of you. So I guess last thing, two things. One is, if anybody's interested, today's the last day for the sale I was doing on the IMT, where you can try IMT for half price. And it is so powerful, it's crazy. It literally, so just think of it this way, any negative past memories, you can take away the charge, meaning get it out of the body. So then it becomes just a memory that you have perspective on, as opposed to when I think of that thing, it becomes a charge. And then every time anything in my life happens that hits on that charge, it reinforces it. And I'm going around with this weight I'm carrying. The other thing is next month, our talk is going to be around personal power, what it is and what it isn't. And I'm going to do something I haven't done, which is I'm bringing in Lynn Carnes as a co-host. So Lynn is going to join us, and we're going to talk about power, what's real power and what's fake power. So I hope you guys have an amazing holiday. And I guess I won't see you the 2025. That's just crazy. Are we flying in cars yet? Are cars flying yet? Are we?
I got to put in a plug. Anybody that has not yet heard the podcast with Christine and Rupert, are missing a big deal. It's amazing. It brought me to tears. It touched my heart so much so I had to pick up the phone and call Christine. And so you really need to listen to it. It's phenomenal.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. All right, guys. Wow, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you in a month.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Yes.